tell me how your day was today.
The kids at school were making fun of me because I was eating a different type of food than them, and they said that they didn't understand the way that I talk.
Do you think this may be related to having too much homework, depression? Do you think that maybe that this is affecting you because there's a lot of other stuff going on in your life right now?
I think that people aren't used to being around somebody that's different like me. I do notice that there are a lot more white kids at my school as opposed to kids that look more like me.
What do you think this means? Is it easier or harder to talk to somebody about your experiences if they're from the same race or ethnic background as you? Have you ever felt like, gee, this person really just doesn't understand where I'm coming from, and associated it to them not having the same background as you? Does finding a therapist of the same ethnic background or race really make a difference in the therapeutic process? Into my personal and professional beliefs on this topic, I wanted to get into the literature and the research to back it up. So I have a few studies that I want to cite. So in order to cite these references, I will be glancing down because I do have some of the articles information right here in front of me. So I'm going to be looking down to reference the articles as I talk more about them. First off, in a study done by Chang and Patricia Yoon in 2010, the article is entitled Ethnic Minority Clients' Perceptions of the Significance of Race in Cross-Racial Therapy Relationships. Basically, in this study, they did a qualitative type of research where they assessed 23 ethnic minority clients and asked them about their experiences with a white therapist. What the results found were a majority of the participants believed that the white therapist could not understand key aspects of their experiences and ended up avoiding racial issues in therapy. However, many felt that racial differences were minimized or decreased if the therapist was compassionate and accepting and openly discussed racial issues. So that tells us a lot. I mean, if therapists of a different race are able to empathize and be open in discussing these issues, then it showed the clients or the participants that it was a safe space and they felt they were being compassionate and accepted in the therapeutic process. In a separate study done by Cabral and Smith in 2011, entitled Racial Ethnic Matching of Clients and Therapists and Mental Health Services, a meta-analytic review of preferences, perceptions, and outcomes, they basically found in their research that there was a tendency to perceive therapists of one's own race and ethnicity somewhat more positively than other therapists. However, they found almost no benefit to treatment outcomes from racial ethnic matching of clients and therapists. What this tells us is that there's a strong preference for individuals in finding therapists of a similar or the same ethnic background or race. However, there was really no benefit in the treatment outcomes between the two groups. Lastly, I want to cite a study done by Knox et al. And this was done in 2003, and it's entitled African American and European American Therapists: Experiences of Addressing Race in Cross-Racial Psychotherapy Dyads. In this study, only African American psychologists reported addressing race with clients of color. Caucasian psychologists only brought up the topic if the client raised it. Additionally, they found that only Caucasian psychologists reported discomfort in discussing race. They found that African American psychologists did not report discomfort in discussing race. However, both Caucasian and African American psychologists had positive effects when they did discuss the topic of race with their clients. So what do these studies tell us? In researching this topic, there was a lot of information on the internet and scholarly articles that had information on this topic alone. Based on what I did read, I found that therapists and clients were able to have open discussions about race if the therapist was compassionate and empathetic and brought it up regardless of the race of the client or the therapist. However, studies do seem to point towards the discomfort of Caucasian therapists in bringing up the topic of race. At the end of the day, it is up to you as the client to pick a therapist that you feel like you can connect to. The number one predictor of positive therapeutic outcomes is the rapport and the relationship between the therapist and the client. That is not incorporating factors of race or gender. It's just the relationship. So if you feel that you're having that connection to your therapist regardless of race, and they're able to discuss these topics with you openly, then that is a no-brainer. I say go with a therapist. If they're not open to discussing these with you, then bring it up. As a therapist, I have clients of various backgrounds, various ethnicities, genders, races, and all I can say is that these are things that we bring up very openly in our sessions. Being a woman of color, it's important for me personally to be able to talk about my experiences. And so I would assume that somebody that's coming from their background, regardless of being a woman of color or their racial background or ethnicity, that they would want to talk about what's going on in their experiences as well. A little bit of self-disclosure. I have had therapists in the past, and I've had all different types of therapists, and my most recent therapist was a Caucasian male. And personally, I never thought that a Caucasian male would ever be able to empathize with me or truly bring what I needed to the therapeutic process. He really surprised me. And that wasn't the case with other Caucasian male therapists that I've had in the past. At the end of the day, he ended up being one of the best therapists that I've ever benefited from. And it really helped me in my growth. And he wasn't the same gender as me. He wasn't the same race or ethnic background. But at the end of the day, he was very compassionate, and he brought up these topics about race, and he asked me questions. And if he didn't understand something, he expressed curiosity by furthering the conversation. What we find in these studies is that some therapists do not initiate the conversations about race or about ethnic or racial issues, which can prevent clients from feeling comfortable about opening up about these topics, which is very important, because being able to feel comfortable in addressing these topics as people of color is one of the most important things when we're talking about successful outcomes. We want to be able to feel comfortable with addressing everything, and under that cloud of everything includes racial issues and topics of discomfort in racial topics. So at the end of the day, do you or do you not go with a therapist with the same ethnic or racial background as you? So the answer is, it's up to you. It's up to you who you feel most comfortable with. And like I always say, it's so important to interview your potential therapist, ask them questions about their knowledge base, and get a feel of if you feel comfortable with them, if you feel that they're engaged and they want to learn more about your background. Just because two people are the same race or share the same ethnicity, that does not mean that they're going to understand each other. Everybody has different experiences. No two experiences are the same. So whether you decide to go with a therapist with the same racial or ethnic background as you, or you decide to go with somebody completely different than you, it's all up to you, and it really depends, again, on that therapist-client relationship that you build. So that was all a mouthful to say. Should you or shouldn't you go with a therapist of the same race or of not the same race? Then do the research when you talk to a therapist, ask them the questions, and just feel out who you feel comfortable with. But as for therapists, we need to do our due diligence to ask questions about race and bring up topics. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to give it a like and a subscribe for more videos. And until next time, managing your mental health matters.